Incompetence is a much more fascinating concept than competence. Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. I am Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends, wives, and especially your boyfriends and your husbands. And a very warm welcome to Sunday's edition. Yeah, we don't have a day of rest on a Sunday. So a very warm welcome to Sunday's edition of the DCU Daily. You can follow me on X, Twitter, at Movies TV Mad, and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad X, on Snapchat, BMouth60, and on TikTok, Mad Mickey's World. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let me ask you a question. What do you think James Gunn's strengths are as a storyteller? In the comments down below, now please, or at me on X, Twitter, at Movies TV Mad, and let me know what you think his strengths, not his weaknesses, just his strengths. While you're doing that, let me tell you too, he's able to make unrecognizable characters in comic books you've never heard of. Household names: Peacemaker, Bloodsport, Peter Quill, Gamora, Rocket Raccoon. He made a fucking raccoon interesting. That is the guy's talents. We can be balanced about someone and criticize them and compliment them for the things they're good at. But they're the very reasons that he's the wrong guy to be the creative head at DC Studios, because that's all he knows how to do. But even worse, Peter Safran and David Zaslav don't want him to do what he's good at. The man wanted to do an authority movie, something that he's good at. They said, "Nah, James, we don't want you dealing with these small characters that nobody's heard of, even though you're good at making them famous and making a lot of bread for studios. No. We want you doing something you're not good at. Making a Superman film, making a Superman sequel. We want you dealing with bigger characters. You're not good at that. You don't really like, you like the underdog. You don't really like your Supermans and your Batmans. That's not really your thing." He says he loves Batman and Superman, but that's bullshit. And he doesn't have a clue how to give you a DCU Batman or give you a great Superman. We've already seen his movie. We already know that. The problems at DC Studios, a name that's not really a studio but just a logo, and the whole studio thing is another fabrication. It's Act 4 of trying to make you forget about Zack Snyder. How is that going? Not very well. So they've got a guy that's good at a thing, but they want him to do a thing that he's not very good at. Listen to what he said the other day. "It's fascinating to me how often these fucking studios, networks and streamers expose themselves. They expose their lack of knowledge of an industry." James Gunn keeps on telling us, the fans, well, you don't work here. You don't understand what it takes to make films, right? Well, you, the audience, may not know the nuts and bolts on how to film a TV drama or a movie, but you understand a good and a bad story, don't you? That's the good thing about these sophisticated audiences. You're sophisticated. Yes, you are, because you've been watching stuff on TV and film for years. You know what you like and you know what you don't like. You know what's good and you know what's bad and mid, right? But they don't listen to outside voices, do they? They only listen to their own voices. This is why they say the first sign of madness is talking to yourself. Although I do talk to myself quite a bit. Shh, don't tell anyone. I don't want to go to Arkham. It's scary in there. Anyway, just listen to this. James Gunn says they might focus on DC movies being about known characters rather than unknowns. "I'm probably not going to do certain movies with characters who audiences don't know. It's harder to get people in the theatre for that kind of thing." What? What bread are you sniffing, mate? What mushrooms have you been smoking? What paracetamol have you been putting down your gob while you were pregnant? What are you talking about? Your strengths, James, are about getting unrecognisable characters recognised, as I was only just talking about. Why are you here? Why are you the creative head of DC Studios if you're not going to do what you're good at? If you're not going to play to your strengths? You only know how to tell one type of story. A story about unrecognizable characters. So now you're just going to work on recognizable characters. Now this is the real reason why The Authority was cancelled. He wanted to do it and they didn't. James Gunn is not running DC Studios at all. David Zaslav and his underling Peter Safran is, right? Basically, Peter Safran is Zaslav's Governor Tarkin. He's henchman. That's what he is. And they're forcing James to do things he's not comfortable with. So James then, the poor bloke, has to go out publicly and explain these situations. They announced all the films and TV streaming shows they were going to give us. Then suddenly, earlier this year, James had to call a press conference and sheepishly admit that after stuff on that list, on that slate, isn't actually going to happen. Embarrassing. He had to go cup in hand and embarrass himself. But the problem really isn't James Gunn. It is, and it isn't. He's a limited creative who only knows how to tell one type of story. That's not his fault. He's been given a big job. I would have taken it. You would have taken it. I've taken jobs that I had no experience in before. You tell them, don't you? When I'm doing my auditions and I go, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I'm not afraid of heights. I don't mind, being chased by someone on a roof. Of course I fucking do. I'm scared of fucking heights. But at least I won't have to pretend. I won't be acting when I look fucking scared, right? Hanging from a fucking rooftop. But anyway, so I understand why James took this job. What ambitious person wouldn't take this job? Wow. I'd love to be in charge of DC films and television and streaming and animation and gaming. How exciting would that be? By the way, where are those fucking games? Nowhere to be fucking seen. The whole thing was a facade from the beginning. But you've got this guy Gunn working to his weaknesses. You employ people because you want them to do something that they're good at. Right? That's what you would do. It's actually funny that I'm rewatching 24 right now. The original concept of 24 was it was going to be a romantic comedy based on a wedding day, one wedding day. That's what it was going to be. That it changed. I still want to see that, by the way. I think that will be quite interesting how that would fucking work. But anyway, those guys are not comedic creatives, so that's why they did something dark, and it really, really worked. And it works today when I rewatch it. You don't get someone to do something they're not good at. And none of this makes sense because they had a plan, and then they said, well, it's not actually a plan just because then he started saying just because something's on a slate, it doesn't mean it's actually going to happen. What? You're giving a list of films and streaming shows to the public. You can't then subtract it away from the public. Taking things away from the public really does cause problems, right? A slate is a promise. You can't tell people, here's a fucking list, I'm making it publicly. Oh no, well it doesn't actually mean these things are happening. That's a terrible look. These decisions are not James Gunn decisions. These are David Zaslav decisions. These are Peter Safran decisions. This is a terrible leadership model. I mean, we thought the DCU was a fucking mess. The DCEU wasn't a mess because of Zack Snyder, Christopher Nolan or David Goyer. It was a mess because of the studio. The studio didn't have the confidence in the people they employed to run the early DCEU, so they drove them out and fired them and brought other people in. It was a mess. It was a mess. It didn't make sense and it was doomed to fail. And the DCU has pretty much failed before it's begun because they brought in a man to do something he's not good at. Don't forget, James Gunn never really wanted to write and direct Superman. He certainly was resistant to directing Superman. And Peter Safran, he admitted it publicly, Gunn. Safran pressured him into directing Superman because he wrote the movie. Nobody else was going to touch that film. I mean, it's a disaster. No one was going to put, no serious director was going to put their name to that film. So Gunn had to put his name to his own garbage. And now we've got this mess, and now he's panicking and he's saying this and that. And here's another oddball situation that we've spoken about before. He suddenly is teasing us about Brave and the Bold and the DCU Batman. But again, he was pressured by fans or a fan about a release date for Brave and the Bold. This is when you realise there's not really any plans, real plans for Brave and the Bold. So he was asked, is it 2028? He goes, well, no. So now they're reporting that it's either 2027 or 2028. There is not. Right, don't forget this, right? Brave and the Bold was announced before Man of Tomorrow. Think about this. Man of Tomorrow actually has a release date, and Brave and the Bold doesn't have a release date. This is why I told you, yonks and yonks ago, when I did that exclusive video, Cast Your Minds Back, that Brave and the Bold is not happening. It's not happening. But they want you to think it's happening, right? Now, I have my doubts whether they'll ever cast a brand new DCU Batman, but if they do, I can promise you, you won't see him in Brave and the Bold. And if there is a Brave and the Bold, if I'm wrong about that, you'll probably see him in Man of Tomorrow, or he'll cameo somewhere else. I don't know. I can't definitely tell you if there is a DCU Batman or not. You know, when you look at the situation right now, you think, well, it's not Pattinson, is it? How can it be Pattinson? Well, it's nobody else. And he keeps on talking about Brandon Skinner and other actors, right? And he's saying, I'm definitely not watching 1923 because I want to cast the DCU Batman. He's putting things out there. But when he's asked directly about the reality of Brave and the Bold, a film that was announced before Man of Tomorrow, right? Before Man of Tomorrow, but Man of Tomorrow's got a release date and Brave and the Bold hasn't. You see, you shills should fucking listen. The devil is in the fucking detail. And I'm very good at pinpointing the detail. Because unlike most people on social media, I have a very high IQ. You see, I don't have to think deeply to see through people, to see through people's fabrications. It's there because I'm clever, because I've got a naturally high fucking IQ. I'm like Superman. I can see through people, and I can see through this facade. So when he's pushed about the reality of Brave and the Bold, he starts to get panicky, and he repeats the same word he did a few months ago. Well, everything's in flux. What does that mean, though? What does that mean? Flux means things are changing every time. All the time. All the time things are changing. That's what fucking flux means. So he claims he's got a secret writer writing Brave and the Bold, and it's brilliant. But if everything's in flux, James, if you don't make movies unless you have a completed good script, then how can you be having a secret writer writing a film that's in fucking flux? And again, it's him trying to put a brave face on other people's decisions. Because as I keep on saying, James Gunn isn't in control of the DCU, not totally, or DC Studios. The decisions are coming from David Zaslav. Let me remind you, the CEO, the man in charge of Warner Brothers Discovery, a huge corporation, has no experience in scripted entertainment. Now, you can do a lot of things in the entertainment industry without much or any experience. You can act. If there's a good director teaching you how to do your lines and how to express yourself, it can be done. A great director can get anyone to be a convincing, actor, not like Shakespeare or something, but you can get away with it. But what you can't do is have someone in charge of a huge corporation like Warner Brothers who has no scripted entertainment experience. And Zaslav hasn't. And he's the one making all these terrible DC decisions. It's very interesting. In one stage, Gunn's saying, oh, well, we just want to do well-known characters. Clayface. He ain't that well-known. But you're doing an R-rated Clayface movie. So everything that you're hearing from James Gunn is a contradiction because everything is in flux at the DCU and they're panicking so desperately to keep their jobs after this studio is sold. There is no question about it. There's no way any competent company that buys Warner Brothers Discovery and looks at the situation at DC Studios is going to keep Gunn and Safran at the will.